Hey, Mike Lake, altobone.com. Today we're going to talk more about recording. I did a video a couple weeks ago about microphones. This Neuman was one of them. And we looked at 7 mics. I did sound comparisons on them. I talked about the characteristics of the different microphones, dynamic versus condenser, large diaphragm, and all that stuff we talked about, did spectrum analysis. So today what I want to do is talk about how to get what you play into the mic into, this thing, a computer, right? There's lots of ways to do it, and depends on your budget, depends on your needs. I mean, you could go out and buy a USB microphone at Walmart, and if you're doing podcasts and you're doing, spoken word stuff, that could be perfectly fine. You can buy an all-in-one that has everything you need. I've talked about my Zoom before. This has 4 inputs, and everything you need is in here. Now, when I say everything, I'm really talking about 2 things that comprise what we call the signal flow in digital audio recording. The first one is a mic preamp, and that amplifies the signal that's coming out of the mic. And the second is the converter that converts that amplified signal that's coming out of the preamp to the 1s and 0s that the computer recognizes, so that you can then manipulate the audio files that you've recorded. And those 2 components can oftentimes be in one box. So you could buy like this $200 Focusrite converter that has mic inputs in the back and line inputs. And then that goes to your computer through a USB or through Thunderbolt, depending on if you've got a Mac or a Windows machine. Or you can get what I use, which is an Apollo, which you can spend a couple $1,000s or more on. And really kind of doing the same thing, but what you get with more money is just a higher quality conversion. So, for me, for playing trombone is kind of a tough instrument to record well. It's got a very broad frequency spectrum. So I like the Apollo because it gives me a truer sound than I would get through a less expensive converter. Now, if you want to go a step further, you get components. It's like your home stereo. You could get an all-in-one amplifier, preamp, tuner, or you could get separate components if you want to get a little bit higher quality. Same with this. So what I have behind me, I'm going to show you in a second, are separate mic preamps. Now, I've got one that's a Meek VC2. And this is a tube-based preamp, and there you can see inside, there's the tube and the nice warm glow. Ooh, warm glow. Note this particular model has other things on it. It's got compression, it's got drive controls, it's got enhancement, and I don't use those things because I don't want to lock myself into those effects as I record. If you set up compression on your mic pre and then you record that, you can't get rid of the compression once it's in the computer. So I'd rather do it in the computer, in the mix, after the sound's been recorded. Okay, next is the Millenia. This is the HV-3B. Now this is different because it's a solid state preamp, right? And its focus, not necessarily warmth, but is on accuracy. And I use this on my piano when I'm doing dual mics, because notice that it has 2 channels, left and right, where the Meek has only 1 channel. So there's a vast variety of, bells and whistles to choose from as you consider these types of equipment. And by bells and whistles, I mean, some of these external preamps have high-end compressors to them, and you can use them just for the compression. Same with EQ. Like this one, this has a high-end EQ, and I could just use it as an EQ component, but you can plug mics into the back of this. Now, contrast having those other boxes with mic pre's that are software emulations of actual boxes, but they live inside your converter. So my Apollo 8, it's made by Universal Audio, and Universal Audio has developed, 100 or more different emulations of compressors and EQs and all sorts of different things you can use in your audio recording. So it has high-end mic pre's, and I'm going to show you 2 of them that I use. I use the Manley Voxbox, The Vox Box is a good preamp that has some of the other functions I talked about earlier. So notice it has the basic input and gain controls. It has a built-in compressor, a de-esser, and an EQ section. And again, I choose to record my stuff flat without any of these other controls, without the compressor or EQ. Now I also have the Neve 1073 Mic Pre. This is another emulation within the Apollo. The Neve comes with a high-end EQ, but no compressor. Okay, that's a lot of theory. Let's listen to some of these. Now, again, it's going to be very subtle, going from, what I recorded to compress down to the video, then put up on YouTube. So the differences are somewhat subtle, and I put a spectrum analysis on this so you can kind of see the waveform as well. But remember, I always say this, don't use your eyes, use your ears when you're judging, what kind of equipment you should be buying. So the first thing we'll listen to is the Joe Meek. I tried to play the same thing in each of the mic pre's. I'm going to do the Joe Meek, the Millenia, I'm going to do the Vox Box, and then the Neve. And you can kind of see what the subtle differences are in each one. So here is what I played into the Joe Meek. Now, one thing I've always heard in the Meek that I really love about it is that big, fat sound. And I'm going to play the Millenia next, and then we're going to compare at least the waveforms, and then compare like maybe that low E, or not low, but middle E flat to see what the difference in sound is. Here's the Millenia. Okay, so as I said earlier, let's compare the two. And I'm not going to use the spectrum analyzer for this part of it. I'm just going to play the E flat from the Meek, E flat from the Millenia, E flat Meek, and Millenia. I'm going to just kind of alternate for a couple of times, and then we'll take a look at the waveform. Here you go. All right, now I admit that's somewhat subtle, especially translated all the way to YouTube, but what I hear is the Meek just has a more solid foundation and meat to the sound. It's just, again, that word warm comes to mind. So let's look at the spectrum analysis and kind of see what the math and what the computer says about the differences in the sounds. Okay, now let's look at the spectrum side by side, and I'm going to freeze frame at that last E flat, and let's compare. Now again, I'm going to say what really matters most is your ears, but I think it's interesting to kind of see what the spectrum analysis looks like. Let's take a look at that side by side. Okay, so I think this is interesting. Look at the Millenia on the right. And by the way, the peaks on all of them, those are overtones. And what I see on the Millenia is more definition of the overtones, more separation, deeper down, and it makes sense because it's a solid state preamp and it's got more accuracy to it. The Meek on the left, you can see this area here just has more frequencies, more louder, if you will, a variety of frequencies. You've got just more meat to the sound. And I think that's what I hear when I think of it being warmer, and I've used the word meatier before. I try to struggle with words, but I just like it. It just seems like a more organic, there's another word we could use, sound to it. Okay, last, let's look at the two software preamps, the Vox Box and the Neve. Compare those. I'm not going to go into a long explanation with the graphs, at least, interpreting the graphs. Take a look, take a listen. And then at the very end, what I did is I took that last improvised phrase that I've been using for this test at the end, and I kind of quilted the four preamps in together so that one starts with the preamp, it ends, and then another one takes over. I think, and when you see the visual, I think you'll get it. And so I hope that helps kind of stretch your ears into some of the things to listen for about this type of equipment. Certainly you don't have, if you're starting out, you're probably going to spend $1,000 on a preamp. You're going to buy, something that's an all-in-one like the Focusrite that I showed for a couple $100. But this is what I have the demo. So if you are at this level, I hope this helps and kind of motivates you to be discerning about what the sound is. And hopefully maybe you can rent some equipment, bring it home, try it out. That's what I did to get all of this, or a lot of this equipment. Or buy from somebody and return it with the understanding that it's okay to return it, and second of all, that it's in pristine shape. So there's ways to try these things out without diving in with $1,000 and hoping for the best. So at least I hope this video helped kind of steer you in the right direction if you're in the market for this type of equipment, and best of luck.